welcome back to the channel, folks. So remember at the beginning of the Warriors video where I said that It and Manhunt were the two games out of Rockstar's library that I was the least familiar with? Well, I wasn't exactly being truthful, as while that was the first time I played the Warriors, I did actually play Manhunt. It's vague memories, of course, but I did play it even if I couldn't remember much about it. The real game out of their library I hadn't touched whatsoever was L.A Noire. I remembered its announcement, trailers for it, and honestly, I was kinda hyped for it. A GTA-style game where you play as a detective in the 1940s? Sign me up. Then the game came out and nothing. I remember critics praising it online, fans enjoying it, but I didn't get around to playing it. I don't have an answer to why. If I'm being honest, I kinda fell off gaming for a few years during that period after I graduated high school. I was busy with college, and then working full-time, so I didn't have the time or energy to game as much as I used to. It wasn't until I worked a certain job and became close friends with my coworkers that the gamer in me was reawakened. Even then, I was never really drawn to experiencing L.A Noire for myself, which ended up creating this misconception for me about what the game was actually like. It wasn't until I watched a retrospective on the game that I realized it was nothing like what I expected. For one, it was published by Rockstar Games and not developed by them. Instead, it was made by the Aussie studio Team Bondi. It had a heavier focus on its story, investigating crimes and interrogating suspects, the GTA elements in the game being very superficial and nowhere near as important as that franchise. Still, I found it intriguing, and so today I'm here to discuss my experience with L.A Noire. Does it live up to the hype and praise, or is it a game with half-baked ideas that never really reached its true potential? Let's find out. As a heads up, I am going to be spoiling everything about the game's story, so if you haven't played it yourself, I'd strongly recommend you do before watching this video.
In the Marine Corps, you deal with the chain of command. Mistakes get made, but you deal with them. You know what you're fighting for, and that you're on the same team. But dealing with corruption is like chasing shadows. You never know whether the guy you're talking to is on the pad, or whether it's your partner, or maybe even the watch commander.
The game is set in post-World War II Los Angeles during the late 1940s, a time of prosperity and economic boom for American citizens. We play as Cole Phelps, a veteran of the war who became a policeman after returning home. Fans of Mad Men might recognize his voice and appearance, as he's played by Aaron Staton, who played Ken Cosgrove on the show. Maybe one of these days I'll finally get around to actually watching Mad Men, or at least a long retrospective on the series. A war hero who's still somewhat haunted by his experiences and actions during his time fighting in Okinawa, Cole is driven by a strong sense of duty and desire to make the world a better place. Though he's not satisfied just being a police officer, and has been working to move up in the force and become a detective. There's nothing wrong with having ambition, but as the game goes on, we'll see Cole isn't as righteous as he believes he is, and his desire for justice might be colored a bit by seeking glory and recognition, like during the opening tutorial level, for example. Cole and his partner respond to a call to assist some detectives with searching a crime scene for some evidence. Specifically, they need to look for the gun used by an unknown suspect to murder their victim, Scooter Payton. Searching the alleyway, you have to make use of sound cues, and if you're using a controller, vibrations, in order to find clues. As someone who's really grown tired of games babying the player, and just handing them the answer immediately, it's refreshing to see L.A Noire show some restraint and give me a chance to find things on my own. To keep it from being just wandering around and listening for the clue sound, several things you find during investigations won't actually be useful to your case, so it isn't too easy to find the needed clues, but can get annoying in later parts of the game where there are much bigger areas to search. The music that plays during these investigations does fade out once you have what you need, so as long as you're listening and paying attention, you won't waste time going over every useless item you find. During this opening scene, I stumble on one of the game's collectibles, a newspaper, that will play a cutscene that may or may not be related to the current case. Near the beginning of the game, they won't relate to your current case at all, instead setting up things happening behind the scenes, and fleshing out some characters who won't be important to the plot till much later. I'm going to avoid discussing what happens in them for now, but I'll circle back to them when they're relevant to the plot. After some snooping around, Cole will spot the gun they're looking for in the reflection of a window before climbing up there to grab it. Despite being ordered to drop it off at the station, he insists on tracking down its owner. So the boys will head to a nearby gun store to see if they can get more info. Getting into the police car, our destination will be marked on the minimap. But it doesn't give us a direct path on how to get there, like you'd expect from a modern Rockstar game. Instead, it's like the older GTA games, where you have to figure it out on your own as you're driving. Though you have the option to ask your partner for directions. Or, much later, you can skip the drive altogether, with your partner taking the wheel before fast traveling to the marked location. Assuming you're not speedrunning the game, that might actually be the better option, because there isn't a lot to L.A Noire's open world. It's less of a big open world with side activities and things to discover, like in a Grand Theft Auto game, and more like the city of Lost Heaven and Mafia. It's certainly impressive, and the developers have done an incredible job capturing the look and atmosphere of 1940s Los Angeles, but there isn't much to it. There's some collectibles to find, locations to visit, and cars to discover and unlock in its free mode, but that's about it. All you've really got to engage with are the optional street crimes that pop up during cases, but they're extremely short and lack any real substance to them. They're not proper side quests with their own little stories, instead just quick setups of a crime that's happening. Then you're immediately thrown into the action, either chasing a criminal by foot, by car, or getting into shootouts. The majority of the time you're not given the choice to take in a criminal alive and are forced to kill them to pass. This makes them extremely forgettable and repetitive, feeling more like the random encounters from GTA 5 than actual side missions. The only thing you get for doing them is experience towards increasing your rank. But even that wasn't enough for me after a while, and I just stopped doing them halfway through the game. Oh, and I'll get into discussing the importance of your rank in a little bit. Since the game follows a linear path and mission structure, the city really is just set dressing to drive through on the way to your next objective or case. Despite those criticisms, I don't necessarily hate L.A Noire's map. In fact, I praised Mafia Definitive Edition for staying closer to its roots and not going full open world. It's just this weird half step between older action-adventure games like Mafia and proper open worlds like GTA. Arriving at the gun shop, the store owner confirms he's sold the gun, and after taking a look at his order book, we narrow down the gun's owner to Errol Schroeder. Heading to his listed address and learning his apartment number from his mailbox, we confront Mr. Schroeder about the shooting. It doesn't go well.
What the fuck is going on here?
You're under arrest, Schroeder. Cuff him, Ralph.
No way. You're not taking me down for this.
Time to give him the fists of justice. L.A Noire's melee combat isn't particularly special or deep. There's no combos or special moves you unlock. In fact, it plays exactly the same as GTA 5's combat, like 1-to-1 with the same button inputs and character movements. I don't really have any criticism against it. It's not the main focus of the game after all, and you're not always going to get into a fistfight with every suspect. Searching Schroeder's apartment, we find a book listing the names of several LAPD officers and possible bribes they might be taking, including Floyd Rose, the guy who had us searching the crime scene for evidence in the first place. This little nugget of potential police corruption doesn't go anywhere and is never brought up again. After calling up the station to pick up Schroeder, we don't get any confirmation on whether he actually killed his employee Scooter Payton either. The case will end and then shift to a flashback set during the war, showing Cole and a few other men looking for the bus that will take them to OCS, or Officer Candidate School. At the end of most cases, we'll usually get a flashback to the war that fleshes out Cole's character, his relationship with his fellow troops, and characters who will appear later in the story, and the things he did during the war that left him the man he is today. This first one is rather basic, but it does introduce someone who will play an important role in Cole's story, Jack Kelso. Like the newspapers, I won't go over the war flashbacks until they're relevant to the story. Returning to the present, the next case has Cole and his partner responding to a call for assistance against some armed bank robbers. This is our tutorial for the shooting in game, and like melee combat, it's pretty bare bones and simple. You start most encounters with your standard pistol, but can usually grab a shotgun from the trunk of a police car. There's the standard cover mechanics that magnetize you to a wall or object. You can peek from cover to fire at enemies who will do the same, and you can pick up any weapons they drop. You don't have a visible health bar. The damage you take reflects on Cole's body, and the screen loses color the more damage you take. Instead of health pickups, we're going with good old regenerating health. Just hide behind cover and catch your breath, and you'll be good as new in no time. And that's about it. You can't buy new weapons to use during cases, can't swap between them on the fly, and don't even have a visible ammo counter. Like the melee combat, it's serviceable, just easy and repetitive. Pretty much every encounter plays out the same. Enemies never leave cover to try and rush you, or throw molotovs or something to force you to move. There are a handful of times where you need to find the right path to an enemy so you're not gunned down immediately, but that's about it. During the following case, while they're driving down the street, Cole's partner will recognize a criminal with an active warrant out for his arrest. Chasing after him, this introduces on-foot chases, which, while they don't need me mashing the run button like other Rockstar games, they're usually heavily scripted and slow, forcing Cole to slog behind a suspect until you're either given the chance to tackle them, shoot them, or get into a brawl with them. There are some rare moments where you can end the chase early, but not many, and almost none of them give you a choice in how to stop the suspect. Outside of using your gun to fire a warning shot, you can't shoot a fleeing suspect in the leg if you're trying to take them in alive. Ditto for the reverse, where if the suspect is firing at you or taking a person hostage, you have to kill them and can't arrest them. This feels like a real missed opportunity, and is part of the reason I ended up ignoring street crimes halfway through. It would have been cool to see different outcomes or rewards depending on how you stop a criminal. Maybe a main story case can change dynamically if you kill a suspect before getting information out of them, as opposed to just instantly failing. It had the potential to add some replay value to the game instead of keeping the player on such a linear path. The final case for the patrol desk begins with a man getting gunned down in broad daylight, and after securing the scene, Cole will search the victim's body. The game really loves reusing this mechanic throughout the story, having you awkwardly examining and turning the various body parts of a victim to look for clues. In this case, I found a layaway voucher for a pair of earrings in his pocket. Entering the shoe store, I speak to the eyewitness of the shooting, Clovis Galleta, who IDs the victim as her boss, Everett Gage. This is where we're finally introduced to the main mechanic L.A Noire is known for, and its biggest selling point: interrogations. Using the clues you've gathered to help you, you'll press a suspect regarding the case to see what they know or might be hiding. After Cole asks a question and the suspect responds, you have to read their expression to see if they're being honest or not. Thanks to some advanced facial animation technology employed by the devs at Team Bondi, they were able to scan their actors' faces and translate their expressions onto 3D models. These facial animations hold up really well to this day, easily picking up the subtle movements and changes in expressions. Though it's not perfect, as some characters, mainly this old guy, can look really goofy. And it wasn't capable of capturing moving hair either. So if you're paying attention, you'll notice every character has short hair, or in the case of women, end up sharing the same hairstyle, which can look a bit cheap compared to the more detailed faces. Each person you interrogate tends to have a different tell, so you need to see if they're avoiding eye contact, blinking a lot, moving their head, or changing their expression. It gets harder as the game goes on, with some suspects having a pretty good poker face that you'll need to study for a while until they finally slip up. After getting a read on them, you have to decide on how to proceed. First, you have the option for truth, with Cole taking the suspect at their word. Next is the one everyone knows, doubt, which will have Cole try to pick apart what the suspect said in order to get more information. And finally, lie, where you call out the suspect for what they said and need to present evidence in order to prove they're lying. If you didn't find the right clue or choose the wrong clue to undermine their lie, you'll fail the accusation and the suspect will chew out Cole. In the remastered edition, these options are changed to good cop, bad cop, and accuse, which, while more on the nose, does make a little more sense in regards to questioning. It's an awesome system, one that pushes the player to be thorough when searching for clues, to pay attention to what those clues mean, and to use their head in order to get the correct responses and eventually solve the case. It's a system that Team Bondi poured an immense amount of work and resources into, maybe to the detriment to the rest of the game, but I'll get to that later, but a system that really helped L.A Noire stand out and be memorable. Outside of finding more evidence or closing a case, successfully getting the correct answers during interrogations will also net you experience to increase your rank. Your rank is this game's version of a leveling system, but instead of increasing Cole's stats like running or shooting, you gain an intuition point instead. Intuition points work like a free hint. You can use them while investigating crime scenes to have all clues show up on your minimap, cutting down on the time looking for them. Or in a similar vein to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, you can use them during interrogations to remove one wrong answer, or to see what percentage of the Rockstar Social Club community made which choice. Intuition points don't recharge after use, so you need to increase your rank or wander around the map to discover locations in order to get more. It's a balanced system that helps players who may not be able to read social cues, and makes you stop and think about whether to use a point now or save up a few for harder cases. And you're not really forced to use it either, so if you want to do it without any help, you can. Returning to the case, Miss Galleta explains that the layaway voucher belongs to her, and that she was shopping for jewelry during her lunch break when her boss showed up, started screaming at her, talked shit about the store and its owner, forced her to leave with him, and finally he took her voucher too. Man, what a petty little fuck. Interrogating her successfully will add the jewelry store's owner, Edgar Kalu, as a person of interest. Using the gun found in the trash near the shooting, we'll head to a gun shop and the owner will tell us the gun belongs to Edgar. Heading to his jewelry store, he'll try to give us the slip, and after catching him, we'll bring him in for questioning.
Has my lawyer arrived yet? I want to see my lawyer.
A lawyer can't help you, Mr. Kalu. You shot a man dead in cold blood. You're going to have to pay for that.
Getting his confession, we find out Kalu, who is Jewish, killed Gage for his bigoted views against him, and for intentionally trying to ruin Kalu's business by using his position in the Chamber of Commerce to block any of his business propositions. Wrapping up the case, Cole has impressed Captain James Donnelly, and earned himself that promotion to detective he always wanted.
Back to your duties for now, Boyle. But here's a piece of advice. Get yourself 2 suits, get them pressed. You'll be needing them.
Done with the tutorial, we're now entering the real meat of the game, with Cole joining the traffic division. He has a new partner by the name of Stefan Bukowski, a laid-back and friendly detective who shares Cole's sense of justice and doesn't mind showing him the ropes. Stefan is one of the few detectives who actually seems passionate about his job and cares about doing things by the book as opposed to trying to close a case as quickly as possible.
This is your first case, Phelps. It's okay to admit it if you're stumped. If you don't know what to do next, just come talk to me and we'll see what we can figure out.
Thanks, Stefan. You're okay.
Cole's first detective case has him heading down to a freight depot to investigate an abandoned car. I'm not sure if tow trucks have been invented yet, but why would a detective be needed for something like this? Well, it turns out we might have a potential murder on our hands.
Victim looks to have lost a lot of blood.
Man, if that isn't the understatement of the year. It looks like some poor schlub exploded in the car to me. There's no body in the car or in the immediate area, so our potential murder victim may have been disposed of somewhere else. Searching the area for clues, I find a receipt for a live hog purchase in the trunk, a bloody water heater pipe that could be the murder weapon, a pair of glasses, and finally a wallet with a license belonging to an Adrian Black. Heading to his residence, we meet his wife Margaret, and inform her about finding Adrian's car, and the potential foul play. After she fills us in that he hadn't come home the night before, and confirms her water heater is the same brand as the pipe we found, we're free to investigate her home. Stepping outside, Cole finds the water heater has been disassembled, and after putting it together, we're one piece short, confirming the pipe at the crime scene came from here. Investigating the home, we find a matchbook from Kavanaugh's bar, a glasses case with the same brand of glasses found at the scene, a photo of Adrian with a secret message written on the back by a woman named Nicole, and finally, a used train ticket to Seattle. The clues paint a picture of a troubled marriage and a man who might have been cheating on his wife.
Operator, give me R&I.
Putting you through now.
Phelps, badge 1247.
How can I help, Detective?
Before interrogating Margaret, I'll use her phone to call up the Records and Identification Division, or R&I, in order to get the address of the bar the matchbook came from. During several cases, you'll stumble upon clues that you'll need extra help with in order to find a location or learn more about a suspect. Instead of guessing what you can or can't call about, the game will automatically give you the objective to call and will mark the nearest phone or police box to use. Since this was my first time playing the game, and I decided against using a guide to get as authentic an experience as I could. I neglected to interview Margaret, assuming I could come back, and instead went straight to Kavanaugh's bar. While there, Cole will ask the bartender about Adrian, and he fills us in that he's been there often with a friend of his by the name of Frank Morgan, who's at the back of the bar now. If I had interrogated Margaret and asked her about the receipt for the pig, she would have told me about Frank beforehand, as it's his name on the receipt for the purchase. I'll be honest, I hadn't quite connected the dots yet when I sat down to talk to Frank, and I assumed he might have killed Adrian. Interrogating him and answering correctly, it turns out he helped Adrian stage the scene and fake his death so he could leave for Seattle to go be with his new squeeze, Nicole. Adrian is currently lying low at Frank's place, and on the way there, a call comes in over the radio to report that the blood in the car came from a pig. Finding and confronting Adrian, Cole will have to chase after him for a bit before we corner him and arrest him for fraud.
Why not just come clean with her, Black? Why the melodrama?
I thought it would be easier.
No, it just got a whole lot harder. Adrian Black, you're under arrest for conspiracy and fraud. We'll see what the DA has to say about wasting police resources on a wild goose chase like this.
You're gonna lose your wife, lose your job, and probably end up in the big house. I hope she was worth it, Adrian.
Anytime we complete a case, we'll be graded on our performance. Our score primarily determined by the amount of clues found, and questions answered correctly during interrogations. Any damages to our car, the city, or to random civilians will negatively impact that score. I managed a 4-star rating, but as the case notes pointed out, I could have done better if I interrogated Margaret Black first. Thankfully, you don't need a particular rating to pass each case, as long as you get a conviction. But the way certain cases end can change depending on how good or how badly you did. Now, I'm not going to get into the heavy details for every single case, as not only would it get repetitive really fast, but it would cause this video to balloon in size. So I'm going to skim through some of the less eventful ones, including some of the DLC missions that I didn't know were mixed in with the regular story missions in the Complete Edition. The next case has us investigating another abandoned car, this time a fancy Packard that belongs to an Argentinian diplomat by the name of Juan Francisco Valdez. After talking to old Meme Face here to learn about the potential suspects.
Can you tell us what they were doing?
Using the headlights of an old Ford so they could strip the thing. I yelled out to them, "I'll call the cops." So they loaded up their car and drove off, tooting and hollering and yelling obscenities at me in Mexican.
You speak Spanish, sir?
No, I do not.
And retrieving a really creepy book with the names of young men and their best features, we circle back to the police station to talk to Valdez.
You fuck young boys, Valdez.
Are you a madman? This will cause an international incident.
After tracking where the car was purchased, we find out a mechanic who worked there boosted the car from Valdez in order to prove his manhood after the creep propositioned him for sex. The following case has Cole investigating a hit and run that's more than it seems, as the victim was actually stabbed and dying before being turned into street pizza. Next, we'll go after someone in a reported stolen car, but after talking to the driver and seeing his paperwork, it turns out he's innocent and didn't know the car he bought was stolen. This leads us to investigating and unraveling a huge car theft ring, taking us through a huge shootout in a warehouse as we figure out the masterminds behind the whole thing. Finally, we arrive at the final case for the traffic desk, the Fallen Idol. Conveniently taking place across the street from the police station, what at first looks like a case of drunk driving ends up being much bigger, as one of the passengers, a Pastor Prime starlet by the name of June Ballard, claims she and her friend were both drugged by a movie producer named Mark Bishop, who then rigged their car in order to try and kill them. Heading to the hospital to talk to the other victim, a young girl by the name of Jessica, from her testimony and clues found at the scene, we find out she's a runaway and was sexually assaulted by Bishop. Suspicious of June's involvement, we'll tail her car and then go incognito by pretending to read a newspaper in order to overhear her calling her husband Guy McCaffrey and asking for his help in killing the movie producer. Racing to Bishop's apartment, we don't find him, but we do find his wife Gloria, who tells us McAfee's men had come by and wrecked up the joint in search of him. Interrogating her, we get a potential location for him, some random prop shop, and find out he does have a thing for younger girls. Heading to the Silver Screens prop shop, After investigating the scene and interrogating the owner, Marlon Hopgood, we find out Mark Bishop regularly likes to drug and assault young and upcoming starlets, along with filming the encounters through a two-way mirror. So things look pretty straightforward, right? Bishop assaulted Jessica, June found out and threatened to expose him, and then he tried killing both of them to silence him. Well, not quite, because it turns out June was using Jessica in order to lure the movie producer into a trap. Knowing his reputation, she sent the desperate young girl to him and then cut a deal with Marlon Hopgood to record his face during the assault and then give June the film to blackmail Bishop into giving her a movie role. Oof. Hollywood, man. They've been dark and corrupt since their very inception, haven't they? Mark Bishop tried to bribe June's husband with a check for $20,000 in order to get the film back, but when that failed, he moved on to Plan B, which was just killing them. Before we can arrest Marlon Hopgood for his involvement in this whole scheme, we're stopped by a vice detective by the name of Roy Earl, who we briefly met when joining traffic. He says we can't touch Hopgood as he's been working as an informant for Vice. Don't worry though, you can get him later during a street crime, where he's running around taking upskirts of women with his giant camera. Huh, I guess some people do show up again during street crimes. They're not very satisfying encounters. Hell, I didn't even realize this was Hopgood at first. But I guess there is a little more to them outside of padding and some XP gains. Thanks to that perv, we find out Mark Bishop is hiding out at an old movie set, and after arriving at the scene and chasing him around the place for a bit, we now have to protect the bastard when McAfee's mob friends show up. Cue a giant shootout throughout the movie set, tearing the place up, explosions going off everywhere, until backup arrives to finish off what's left of the mobsters. Case closed, Bishop is on his way to jail, and Cole has earned himself a promotion, now moving up to the Homicide Desk. Having shown up during the commotion, Roy Earl takes Cole and Stefan to the Blue Room Jazz Club in order to celebrate his promotion. This marks the end of the game's more episodic approach to cases, as a bigger story will now start to unfold across the rest of the game, with a few of its key players now being introduced. Technically, we already met him twice, but we got Roy Earl, an all-around asshole and shady vice detective, a beautiful German singer by the name of Elsa, and a psychologist by the name of Harlan Fontaine, making now a good time to talk about the newspaper flashbacks, as he was previously featured in a few of them. In the first newspaper you find, you're taken to a scene of Fontaine giving a college lecture on psychology and therapy. One of his students, a veteran of the war by the name of Courtney Sheldon, asks him if it might be possible to treat battle fatigue and collapse under duress, essentially PTSD before we started calling it that, and before it was properly understood. Fontaine says that it might be possible to cure it with the right therapy and treatment, prompting Courtney to mention a friend of his from the VA hospital who's completely gone, and still seeing delusions from the war. Fontaine will tell Courtney to send his friend to one of his clinics and he'll try to help him, which we see in the following newspaper when he starts talking to that person and administers some morphine to help calm him down. In the following newspaper flashback, Courtney will discuss his concerns about the treatment Fontaine is giving his patients, noting that all of them are now addicts on the morphine he's giving them. The doctor brushes off his concerns and reassures him that they will eventually get better and no longer need the drug. Despite how he's held in high esteem, Fontaine really comes off as being disingenuous and acting like a pompous know-it-all. From the way he moves, his facial expressions, his voice, and even how he talks really adds to it, using big words and flowery language to make himself sound smarter than he actually is. His phony attitude of the enlightened doctor also works as a mask to hide his more nefarious dealings, but I'll get to that a little later.
All right, gentlemen, take your seats. Let's get this over before lunch. Floyd Rose of the Homicide Squad has decided to take early retirement. We will all miss Floyd and the steely edge he brought to his police work. The department has arranged a wee drink at the Galway Arms to quench the mighty thirst a man gets from 25 years of police work. Floyd's departure leaves a place at the top table, and the chief has seen fit to promote Cole Phelps from burglary to the Homicide Desk.
With a new promotion also comes a new partner, Rusty Galloway. A grizzled and cynical cop, he has no issues bending the rules to close a case, and he's skeptical of Cole's by-the-book nature. Rusty is quick to pin a crime on a suspect for the most circumstantial of evidence, treating his job like a chore he would rather be done with as quickly as possible. He works as a good foil for Cole, and through their interactions, Rusty exposes the fact that Cole isn't all about being by the book, but also because he wants the cases to be much bigger in order to get more recognition for solving them. Though Rusty has no issues soaking up that recognition alongside Cole, when he does end up proven right. Our first case while working Homicide is pretty big, as we're investigating a murder that shows all the same signs of the Black Dahlia case. As a quick recap for those not familiar with the case, or like me, needing a refresher, the Black Dahlia murder is a notorious and unsolved murder case that unfolded in Los Angeles in 1947. The victim, Elizabeth Short, was a 22-year-old aspiring actress with striking black hair, which earned her the nickname the Black Dahlia in the press. Her body was found in a vacant lot, horribly mutilated, her face cut from ear to ear, her body cut in half with surgical precision, and posed in a disturbing manner. The brutality of the case shocked the city and gripped the attention of the country. The LAPD was under intense pressure to solve the case, but despite the evidence found, the supposed killer taunting the police with phone calls and letters, and the hundreds of suspects interviewed, the case went cold and remains unsolved to this day. It's a fascinating story with tons of books, movies, and documentaries released surrounding it, all offering their own theories on who did it. Our victim in this case is a woman by the name of Celine Henry. Her naked body found mutilated and posed similar to the Dahlia case. However, one key difference is the writing on her body that says "Fuck you BD" and Tex, with the BD most likely standing for Black Dahlia. The coroner suspects it's just a way to throw off the police, so it's not clear if it's connected to the Dahlia case or not. Cole naturally wants to go with that lead, while his partner Rusty has his money bet on it being a copycat.
Gentlemen, what can I get you?
Phelps and Galloway, LAPD. Were you working here last night?
Yes. How can I help, officer?
You can start with your name.
Garrett Mason.
The investigation will first take us to the bar Celine visited the night before, the owner filling us in on her troubled relationship with her husband and giving us the plate number of some guy she left with. Visiting her home and talking to our neighbor, we'll go speak to Celine's husband, who proves a bit uncooperative.
Kill my own wife?
She was a lush and a tramp, and you just couldn't stand it anymore.
Shut your goddamn mouth.
So now you're gonna tell me you loved her? Ah, the DA goes all gooey over remorse, Jacob.
After helping him cool off with a healthy serving of fruit punch, I'll call up R&I to follow up on the license plate number, learning the car it belongs to and its owner, Alonzo Mendez. Heading to Mendez's apartment, we search the place and find some incriminating evidence in the form of a bloody wrench. Alonzo will show up afterwards, and after another chase, we'll book his ass and toss him in jail. Once again, justice has been served. Oh, I should point out that this case is actually based on the real-life case of Jeanne French, who was killed in a similar manner, had BD written on her body, and was also believed to be linked to the Black Dahlia case in real life. Actually, quite a few cases throughout the game are based off of real-life crimes from the time period, just tweaked and changed slightly to work with the bigger narrative.
This pain to cool the lava you pump through my veins, 'cause I'm burning up for you.
The following case has us investigating another woman killed in a similar manner to Celine. This time, the victim is Deirdre Moeller. Rusty and the department believe that all the media buzz and information surrounding the Black Dahlia killer is giving would-be murderers the info they need to stage their own killings as being done by him. Cole naturally isn't so convinced, believing this case might be connected to the previous one. Our investigation gives us two potential suspects. The first is the victim's husband, Hugo. After speaking to his daughter and investigating the home, we find out that their marriage has been rocky as of late, the daughter admitting her father had hit her mother before. If Hugo here looks familiar, that's because he's played by Greg Grunberg, most famously known as Matt Parkman on the show Heroes, or Ethan Thomas from the game Condemned Criminal Origins, a game I might take a look at next month for the channel. Our second suspect is Eli Rooney, a convicted child molester who hangs around Belmont High School where Deirdre's car was found, and where her daughter attends school. Booking both suspects, there's enough evidence pointing to both of them, and after interrogating each one, you'll have to decide which one to charge. Well, sorta. While you technically can complete the case by charging either one of them, you can only get a perfect 5 stars by charging Eli. In fact, if you choose Hugo, you'll end up getting chewed out by your commanding officer for not making the right choice. And when I say right, I don't mean the correct choice. No, I mean as in choosing the guy your boss wanted locked up. It can be a frustrating outcome, especially since you have heavier evidence on Hugo, and Eli feels like an obvious red herring. But this is where we start to see how the LAPD really works. With the Black Dahlia case still unsolved, they're under a lot of pressure to close any cases as fast as they can and restore the public's faith in them. So locking up a child molester for a gruesome murder plays better to the media than arresting her husband, especially since no one is going to question the circumstantial evidence surrounding the arrest when it's a pedo. Now, I actually was ready to throw the book at Hugo, but I caused a bug to happen by interviewing him first and then Eli, where I wasn't given the option to charge Hugo at all and was forced into choosing Eli. Ironically, I still got a 3-star rating, though that's mostly because I screwed up some of the questions. Our next case, wait for it, involves yet another woman killed in a similar manner to the Black Dahlia and our other victims. Damn those vultures in the press and media. Their sensationalization of these murders are inspiring copycats of the copycat killers. When will it end? Okay, obviously all these cases are indeed connected, and we may have been too hasty in our previous convictions. Spelled out and made way more obvious this time, as the killer seems like he actively wants us to catch him this time. Using a trail of blood, he leads us out of the crime scene and baits us using possessions belonging to the victim, ending with a library card that IDs the victim as Antonia Maldonado. Like the previous cases, the same beats are repeated again, ending with us charging someone on circumstantial evidence. And the next 2 cases do the same thing. While this time around both victims were left fully clothed, at first seemingly making them unrelated to our other homicide cases, it still follows the same pattern of choosing between someone close to the victim, or someone your bosses would prefer to charge instead. In the white shoe slaying, it's a disfigured hobo who lost his mind after returning from the war, who doesn't really confess to the murder, just babbles on about murdering lots of women. I know the 1940s was a different time, but I'm not so sure this guy is competent to stand trial. And in the studio secretary murder, the preferred choice is Grosvenor McCaffrey, a wannabe writer and admitted communist. Don't really need to explain why the LAPD would love to lock him up, do I?
Well done, lads. You did well with the Summers case. But we have a problem. The examiner received a new letter today.
Do you mind if I take a look, Ray?
All this sloppy police work finally comes to bite the LAPD in the ass in the final mission for the Homicide Desk. The BD killer has made contact with the LAPD again. Taunting them with another letter, it seems he may have been behind every previous homicide case. Oh no, I'm totally shocked. The coroner and investigator agree. However, Captain Donnelly isn't willing to let go of the 5 men they have in custody without an arrest. Otherwise, the scandal would destroy the department. Luckily for the LAPD, Cole Phelps is on the case. Reading the extract from Prometheus Unbound, a poem that the killer sent along with his letter, he deduces the killer isn't just being a pompous douchebag, but giving the department a hint on how to track him. Piecing together that the extract might be referring to the fountain at Pershing Square, Cole and Rusty rush to the park and find another clue. The Social Security card belonging to Elizabeth Short, aka the Black Dahlia, and another extract from Prometheus Unbound. Now, I actually got pretty excited when this part began, as you would have to read the extract and then figure out on your own where the next clue was. It felt like the map was now actually relevant, and the game was encouraging the player to explore Los Angeles in order to help solve the scavenger hunt. If you visited the location already, you'd see it as a point of interest on your map. If you haven't, it'd be marked as a question mark instead. But either way, you'd have to drive out and figure out if you got it right. Or so I thought, as instead all you really need to do is open the map, choose a location, and if your objective is updated, you got it right. If not, open the map again and choose a different spot. Look, I understand not wanting to frustrate the player and waste their time, but come on, half the fun of a scavenger hunt is wandering around trying to solve it. It loses all of its charm if I'm just randomly picking spots on the map till it tells me I'm right. Following the trail of breadcrumbs, we'll find a piece of evidence belonging to a previous victim, along with another extract pointing us to the next location. Our gruesome scavenger hunt comes to an end when we arrive at an abandoned church and discover the identity of the BD killer, Garrett Mason.
Reminds me of my days as an altar boy.
There's a light coming from the house.
Nothing hasty, gentlemen. Keep your hands where I can see them, or I'll be forced to redecorate the stucco with your entrails.
We're from the LAPD, sir. I'm gonna tell you only once to lower your weapon.
The LAPD, you say? Is it really possible you could have found me after all this time? How interesting.
Put down the gun, shitbird. Last warning.
This boorish ignoramus could never have found me. It was you, wasn't it? Do you remember me, detective?
The temp bartender.
Yes, you found me.
It's a solid reveal. The guy we were looking for all this time wasn't just right under our nose, but was the first person we spoke to when investigating Celine's murder. It also really shows how sloppy the LAPD's investigations really are, as instead of exhausting all leads or investigating all suspects, they all zero in on the ones that give them the best chance of closing the case. Rusty focuses on the spouses or friends who knew the victims. The LAPD wants to pin it on existing degenerates in order to look even better in the papers. And Cole, while technically being right that it was the BD killer, made him out to be this bigger-than-life figure, and the idea he could be an ordinary bartender never even crossed his mind. After Mason takes off, we'll give chase and discover his chamber of horrors. The bloody bathtub and surgical tools confirming without a doubt, he's our guy. Rusty will leave to get back up, while Cole will chase Mason throughout the underground catacombs beneath the church, trading shots with him until we corner him in the graveyard and put an end to the BD killer. Having exposed and killed the most prolific serial killer in US history, Cole and Rusty can expect commendations, a presidential medal, a sick-ass parade, and all the big-titty goth mommies they could ever want.
Where's the press, Cap? I think Phelps and I should get a medal for this. This has got to be the case of the year, right? The case of the century when you think about it.
You finished?
Yes, Skipper.
Good. Because there won't be any press briefings or commendations.
What are you talking about? We got the werewolf, the guy who killed the Dahlia, killed all the other broads.
You got no one. Mason was a ghost.
Can you at least tell us why, Captain?
Mason is the half-brother of one of the most highly elected officials in this country.
How high?
Beyond the moon for mere mortals like us, Rusty.
Well, that sucks. Talk about an unsatisfying and half-assed ending to this whole case. The whole thing getting covered up and buried because Garrett Mason was related to someone big and powerful seems so forced. Like, yeah, I know cover-ups like that do happen in real life. Probably not to this absurd degree, but it does happen. But what would have happened if we didn't kill him? Would we still let him go? Would he go to the press himself? Or would he have an accident in his jail cell when no one was looking? I know the developers probably just want to keep historical accuracy with the Black Dahlia case still being unsolved, but there could have been a better way to end the case that didn't feel like it was all for nothing. For example, and probably the obvious choice, just make Garrett Mason a copycat killer. He idolized the BD killer, killed women the same way he did, but didn't have any evidence connecting him to Elizabeth Short. We still get to make our case, and the timeline is maintained. Also, the fact the police department is just going to quietly sabotage their own cases in order to free the innocent men they arrested feels so sloppy. Like, seriously, do they expect no one to notice? Or the suspects not to sue? Hell, even if they are all free now, their lives are ruined forever. Their friends and loved ones all looking at them with suspicion, like they really are murderers, but they just got lucky. Feels like a missed opportunity to explore. Like later in the game, we run into one of them and see how our actions have ruined them. Would have been a great way to make the street crimes a lot more interesting. Oh well. While I hate how our time at the Homicide Desk ended, it was a fun ride. However, you have to get off that ride and say goodbye to Rusty, as Cole has earned himself a promotion, and we're heading off to work for the Vice Desk. Well, it's hard to tell if it's a real promotion or not. Like Captain Donnelly said, the chief of Vice himself requested Cole to join them, but it could also be a way to move him to another department and keep Cole from going all righteous and exposing the cover-up for the Black Dahlia case. Guess we'll just have to wait and find out.
Phelps, welcome to Vice. This is your new partner, Roy Earl. Take a seat. A special request was made to transfer you to Ad Vice. We need a man with your kind of starch on this desk, son.
A new department means a new partner. This time around, it's Roy Earl. Through our previous interactions with him, we already know he's a shady guy, and somehow a bigger asshole than Rusty. In the tradition of all narcotics cops, Roy breaks the rules, plants evidence on suspects, and of course is dirty himself, pocketing money found at crime scenes and cutting deals with known criminals in the city. He's a selfish guy who only looks out for himself and isn't afraid to throw someone under the bus to save his own ass.
In the business, we call this foreshadowing.
Our first case for Vice has Cole investigating the deaths of 2 men who overdosed on morphine, specifically U.S. Army-issued morphine. Our time in Vice will mostly be spent trying to uncover where the morphine is coming from, how it's being distributed, and to put an end to the whole racket. It's time to revisit the newspaper flashbacks again, as the morphine has been brought up a few times during those cutscenes. An Army surplus of morphine was stolen from the SS Coolidge, courtesy of Courtney Sheldon and some of his friends from the 6th Marines. Courtney had hoped to sell the goods and get them into clinics to help people, working with a dope distributor by the name of Lenny Finkelstein to get it done. Unfortunately, things go south, as the morphine makes its way to the streets and proves way too potent, leading to a lot of deaths by overdose. At the same time, Lenny's brother-in-law, Mickey Cohen, a big-time criminal who controls the drug game in L.A., wants to get his hands on the rest of Courtney's supply of morphine. The two sit down to a meetup. Mickey wants to work out a deal to distribute the rest of the morphine, and when Courtney refuses, offers to just buy him out completely. Courtney will walk away from the table, less because of a bad deal, and more so because he doesn't want to put more morphine out on the streets. This puts Courtney on Mickey Cohen's shit list, the naive medical student turning to his war buddy Jack Kelso for help. Okay, so I pretty much glanced over him until now, but Jack Kelso was a part of the 6th Marines alongside Courtney and Cole. While they were all friends, enlisting, going through school, and fighting together during Okinawa, he was something of a rival to Cole. Kelso was a hothead during OCS, lacking the qualities to lead and lacking the patience for the rules and procedure of officer candidate school, causing him to drop out and become a rifleman instead. This contrasts with Cole, who would do as he was told, followed the rules, and was considered a perfect leader by his superiors. On paper, anyhow. While friends, their relationship starts off rocky as Kelso jokes that Cole has Custer syndrome, a man so obsessed with his own glory, he'd sacrifice the men under his command. Is that more foreshadowing, I hear? There's more to their relationship and time in the war, but I'll circle back to that later. Kelso wants no part of the mess with the morphine, and tells Courtney to just give up the drugs to Mickey Cohen and walk away. Not wanting to cause any more deaths, and afraid the morphine heist will be traced back to him, he can't just give up the supply. Instead, he asks Kelso's help in facilitating a meetup and truce with Mickey Cohen. Returning to the present, Cole and Roy will investigate the apartment belonging to their victims, discovering they got their morphine from the Black Caesar food hut across the street. Talking to the guy working the counter and searching the place, our investigation leads us to a music booking agent by the name of Jermaine Jones. Busting up his operation, and the faces of his 2 goons, he gives up more info about the morphine, eventually taking us to where the drug is being distributed from, Polar Bear Ice Company. Confronting the building's owner, Lenny Finkelstein, he'll take off and sick his guys on us. After a huge shootout that spans the entire warehouse, the case ends with us putting Lenny on ice, permanently.
They're all dead, Finkelstein. Leave the weapon and put your hands up now.
Put my hands up. Sure. Then what? Cop to peddling the dope? Cut a deal? Ship me off to the queue? Soon as I get locked up, some old friend puts an ice pick above my ear? No thanks.
Only one other way out, shitheel.
So come.
Now, the rest of the cases for Vice are a bit weird, partially because 2 of them are DLC, and the other one kind of feels like filler. First, Cole and Roy will meet with an informant and learn about a big weed distribution ring that's using canned soup as a way to move the ganja. Next, we'll investigate the disappearance of a boxer who screwed over several bookies, Mickey Cohen, and hilariously enough, our buddy Roy, by refusing to throw a fight and losing them all a lot of money. Then Vice is brought in on the murder of a model that was staged to look like a suicide, eventually uncovering a burglary ring and giving us this gem of a moment.
What have I done?
Damn! He ain't gonna be in Rush Hour 3.
This leads us to the case Manifest Destiny, where we're investigating the shooting of 2 men at a nightclub, who just so happen to be carrying army surplus morphine. So, despite our previous efforts, the stuff is still getting on the streets somehow. Though Roy thinks it's less someone still distributing, and more likely we're just seeing what's left on the streets start to pop up. After investigating the 111 club where the initial shooting took place, we'll head over to the Blue Room to interview the German singer Elsa to see what she can tell us. She doesn't tell us much, and tells Cole he should go talk to the man everyone knows controls the drug trade in LA, Mickey Cohen. Roy agrees, but Cole, being the ever-dutiful and thorough detective, needs to find something out first, and decides to tail Elsa. The following day, the 2 detectives will sit to talk to Mickey Cohen to get information out of him regarding the shooting and location of the remaining morphine. He doesn't cop to anything, only admitting to vaguely warning Courtney and his buddies about getting out of the criminal life. Spoilers, he's behind the shooting and behind several more that take place during the case. The targets in the different shootings all being members of the 6 Marines, who all took part in the heist of the morphine. Once Cole figures it out, it leads to an awkward reunion with his buddy Jack Kelso.
How have you been, Jack?
Cut the crap. You pick me up in front of my apartment like a common criminal and then expect small talk? Fuck you.
While technically picking him up for his own protection, Cole doesn't waste time in grilling Kelso about the morphine heist and anything he may know. There's still a lot of bad blood between the two from their time serving in the war, Kelso refusing to be cooperative or give up anything useful on the other Marines, accusing Cole of once again chasing after glory at the expense of others. At the same time the shootings are taking place, the LAPD is undergoing a separate scandal, this time involving LA's most famous madam, Brenda Allen. A police sergeant has gone public about his relationship with her, and also exposed that cops were looking the other way in regards to her working girls in exchange for bribes, and probably sampling some of her wares themselves. As brought up in a newspaper scene during this case, the corruption goes to the very top of the LAPD, threatening to take a lot of them down if the media keeps digging. However, a certain someone offers up the idea of throwing another police detective under the bus in order to distract from the Brenda Allen scandal. This all really happened, by the way. It exposed the corruption of the LAPD, several high-ranking officials resigned, and the city would attempt to reform the police department after the scandal. Keyword there is attempt. At the end of the case, Courtney Sheldon will arrive at the station and ask to speak to Cole, bringing along Dr. Fontaine with him. He's trying to set the record straight and disavow any involvement with the morphine heist, but the evidence we gathered over the case is enough to confirm he's involved in some capacity. Still unwilling to play ball, Cole threatens to throw Kelso under the bus instead, which works as Courtney is willing to make a deal. However, before we can get his confession, we're interrupted by Captain Donnelly and the Chief of Police, who suspend Cole from duty and demand to speak to him now. Wait, what the hell? What could Cole have possibly done to earn a suspension? The guy's as milquetoast and straight-laced as they come.
You certainly had us fooled, Detective. Phelps, you're one of my favorite sons. You've broken this old man's heart.
Sir,
What is going on here?
You're suspended, Phelps. Hand over your badge and gun.
Don't keep him waiting.
What is going on here?
Your wife's attorney has pictures of you and the German. Compromising pictures, lad.
She's pressing charges. You'll be formally charged with adultery. A criminal cannot serve as an LAPD officer, as I'm sure you're aware.
I don't understand.
How could you do it, lad? Your wife, your children, consorting with the enemy and a dope fiend at that.
Okay, so this reveal really threw me for a loop when I first encountered it, and even knowing what I do now, it still feels very abrupt and forced. Like Cole's affair with Elsa comes completely out of nowhere. Before this case, he never talks to or even properly interacts with her. Several chapters end with him returning to the Blue Room and watching her sing, but that's it. He's just sitting down to watch her. You could interpret that in any number of ways. You know, like he's enjoying her singing, or he loves to drink after work, or that it's just a simple cutscene meant to cap off a case and has no actual importance. The early scene in the chapter where he visits her apartment is the only time that it's even remotely hinted at their relationship, but it fumbles the ball because of the setup of the mission, where you have to tail Elsa's cab without getting caught, which makes no sense, as why would he have to tail her if they're having an affair? He'd already know where she lives. The obvious answer is that he isn't tailing her, but keeping his distance so no one spots them together. But that falls apart too. Mainly because he basically tells Roy he was going to go after Elsa, and because the dumbass uses his own car to go to her place, instead of taking a cab like she did. I'll be honest, I didn't even notice the light going out in Elsa's apartment, so I didn't think anything of it and thought he was going to interrogate her, as the setup of tailing her didn't lead me to think otherwise. Oh, and Roy was the one who snitched, and threw Cole under the bus. The scene shows him outside of Elsa's apartment, and later, during the newspaper cutscene, he's the one who approaches his bosses about throwing Cole under the bus to cover their asses. Like, I know the game has been working to chip away at Cole's character, that he isn't the straight-laced, by-the-book cop that he claims he is. Several characters constantly question his motives, the war flashbacks and his old buddies from the war there to expose who he really is. The affair with Elsa just doesn't have enough setup to serve the same purpose. I'm willing to believe Cole is the type of guy who would cheat. There's just nothing in the game prior to this moment that would have made me think he had something going on with Elsa. Shit, have Elsa pop up in a few cases and be extra flirty with Cole. Or use those cutscenes at the Blue Room and have them interact a little more. Not much to give it away, but enough where the reveal would make sense. Oh, and Cole is married and has 2 daughters, by the way. If you're wondering why I never brought it up, it's because the game hardly acknowledges it. There are conversations with other characters mentioning that he's married and has kids, but Cole himself never actually brings it up. It kind of reminds me of the original Mafia, where Tommy's family is constantly talked about, but pretty much never show up outside of his wife Sarah, and that's only for like 1 chapter. Look, his wife doesn't need a bigger role in the plot, but maybe you have a cutscene at the beginning when he comes home to tell her about his promotion, or maybe when he calls up dispatch they say they have a message from his wife, or, I don't know, a picture of his family on his desk you can look at. It can just feel jarring to find out he's married at the same moment you learned he's having an affair, especially since it's easy to skip over the driving conversations where his partners bring up his marriage. His affair exposed, his job put in jeopardy, now demoted down to arson, and being thrown out of the house by his wife, Cole does the only rational thing a man in his situation can do: go visit the woman he was caught having an affair with. Cole, you dumbass. Yeah, they got you in 4K with photographic evidence you can't dispute, but you got way more eyes on you now. Going back to Elsa isn't exactly going to help save your career, or keep your wife from cleaning you out in a divorce. I gotta tell you, the Vice section of the game feels incredibly unbalanced in terms of its storytelling. Most of the information regarding the morphine distribution is told to us in the newspaper cutscenes, so there isn't really a mystery to unravel, more so just waiting to see when Cole has to deal with it. It basically shoots its load with the first case when we bust Lenny Finkelstein and his whole operation, leaving us with filler content till we get to Cole getting exposed. If we used the newspaper cutscenes showing Courtney and Mickey Cohen's dealings as cases instead, it would have felt way more cohesive.
Okay, everyone, keep it down. Cole Phelps joins the arson squad today.
How'd you like pork in that German whore, Phelps?
Phelps is up before a review board in December. Until then, he works the Arson Desk. End of story. Phelps.
Yes, sir.
I don't care what you did or didn't do, Phelps. I hear you're a good case man. But if you fuck up on my detail, I'll have you out of here before your feet touch the ground.
Poor Cole. I actually kind of feel bad for him now. I'm not excusing his infidelity, even if it was forced and came out of nowhere. But he looks so pitiful after his fall from grace. All the cases he closed, the hard work he put in, it means absolutely nothing because of one mistake. You know the routine by now. A new department means a new partner. This time it's the older detective Herschel Biggs.
I don't do partners. You know that, Cap.
You do now, Biggs.
A veteran of the First World War, during his tenure in the LAPD, he refuses to work with a partner. The old guy mostly keeping to himself and avoiding being chummy with his coworkers. Also, for some strange reason, he's the narrator introducing the patrol cases at the beginning of the game. But only those cases. And they're the only ones with the narrator too. He's played by Keith Sarabaika. Thanks so much for that, Google, because I would have had no idea how to pronounce his last name. He's done a lot of voice acting, showing up in series like Mass Effect and Dead Space, but I remember him from his live action appearances, mainly when he played Holt on Angel, and Donatello on Supernatural. Despite the fact that Cole's demotion to arson is supposed to be a punishment, and to keep him out of the way of the corrupt higher-ups, they've actually put our boy on the path of uncovering yet another conspiracy. These final cases are similar to the ones during Homicide. Less individual cases with their own stories, and more pieces that come together to reveal the overarching plot and conspiracy. It starts with investigating some seemingly innocuous house fires, potentially caused by some faulty gas heaters. However, the gas heaters show signs of intentional tampering, the evidence pointing to a serial arsonist behind the fires. Oh, and this guy right here? He's voiced by Eric Nenninger. He played Francis's friend Eric on the first couple of seasons of Malcolm in the Middle. I instantly recognized him as soon as I saw his face, and I knew I had to bring it up during the video. Anywho, our investigations show there's a lot more going on than some random guy burning down houses, as the homes that were targeted belong to people who won vacation getaways. It goes even deeper, as those vacation winners just so happen to be homeowners who refuse to sell their homes to a real estate development company known as Elysian Fields. The company is run by Leland Monroe, who is played by John Noble, who you either know from The Lord of the Rings or from Fringe. He's a part of a secret cabal made up of various corrupt officials in LA, referred to as the Suburban Redevelopment Fund. Outside of Monroe, the mayor, the chief of police, the district attorney, an LA Times editor, and the vice president of an insurance company are all involved. Oh, and our buddy Dr. Fontaine is in on the whole thing too. The Suburban Redevelopment Fund is running a huge scheme in order to defraud the government and line their pockets. To break it down, the government is planning to build a new interstate highway system through LA, which was actually briefly mentioned when Cole became a detective. Any land located where the government plans to build would be bought through eminent domain. So, the SRF planned to buy all the homes located where the future highway would be built. However, they went a step further and planned to tear down all the existing homes, and build new homes they would sell to returning soldiers from the war, who would fund those homes with their GI Bills. Double dipping by selling to veterans, they'd triple dip and save money by building shitty houses built with shitty building materials. Okay, if you're still following me, you might be scratching your head wondering why they'd put the effort into building and selling new homes. Well, by building new houses on the existing land, they can raise the value of the property and get even more money out of Uncle Sam through eminent domain. Needless to say, it's a very complex scheme, with several players and moving pieces involved, and a scheme that's been silently going on since the beginning of the game. So remember how I said there was more going on than some random guy committing arson? Well, there really is a random arsonist running around. This is where Dr. Fontaine gets involved, as he's been manipulating Courtney Sheldon's military buddy, the one who has been suffering from PTSD, into helping him, framing it as a form of treatment and using morphine to give him an extra push. He's been having this unknown man burn down houses as a form of dealing with his trauma from the war. Said houses belong to the people who refused to sell to the SRF, and to ensure no one is harmed, the families who didn't sell were given vacation getaways to guarantee they wouldn't be home when their houses went up in flames. Except, a couple of families ended up skipping on their vacations at the last minute for various reasons, which means they end up dying tragically when their house is burned down. This mess begins to unravel their little scheme, with Cole putting the pieces together to start finding out what's going on. Even worse, Dr. Fontaine's arsonist is completely destroyed after finding out he's killed innocent people, causing him to go off the rails and start random fires at a whim, now in the belief he's actually saving people. Now, while I've summed up and exposed the players behind the Suburban Redevelopment Fund, there is still quite a bit of information I've left out and we need to go over. After the first 2 arson cases, Cole starts to put together a picture of what's going on, but still needs more information. This is when Elsa shows up and tells him she's received a life insurance payout after her friend died on the job. A very hefty payout, in fact. Her friend, Lou Buckwalter, was someone she met and bonded with while staying at Ellis Island when fleeing from Germany during the war. Being his closest friend, he chose to name Elsa as his beneficiary. However, the payout of $20,000 is way too generous, so she suspects foul play in his death and came to Cole to discuss it. Seeing this as an opportunity to learn more about the conspiracy, he tells Elsa to reject the payment and seek the help of Jack Kelso, but not to mention Cole's involvement. In a surprise move I did not see coming at all, this is when we switch from playing as Cole to playing as Kelso. Oh, and we play as him for the remainder of the game. We only take control of Cole one last time during the DLC mission Nicholson Plating that's set before the final case. It's like the reverse of Metal Gear Solid 2, where you started the game as Snake, but then like an hour in, would switch to Raiden and play as him for the rest of the story. At Elsa's insistence, Kelso will start investigating why the insurance payout is so high, and if there really is a cover-up going on. This leads him to investigating the offices of Elysian Fields, discovering the homes for the GIs are built with crappy materials, getting thrown into a really stupid and awkward sequence where he has to run away from a bulldozer trying to crush him. Seriously, it's awful. The perspective of the camera keeps you from seeing how far away the bulldozer is from you, and you have to try to shoot at the driver to slow him down. But because of how it locks on and swings the camera around to face him, it tends to disorient you and make you easy pickings as you try to run away. After getting away and tracking where the bogus building material was bought, we're given the most contrived piece of evidence in the entire game. Before this point, just about every clue you'd find to help in an investigation was laid out or discovered in a way that felt believable. If a suspect was busted because of that evidence, it's because they were reckless and leaving it behind, they thought it was something unimportant, or it was provided by someone else. So that whole scheme I explained with the Suburban Redevelopment Fund, and all of the people I listed off who were involved, well, all of that was revealed in a film reel that recorded all the big players meeting and openly discussing their plan. Like what? Really? That's how we got them? A literal recording of everyone involved discussing the plan? It makes absolutely no sense. Like, why would there be footage of these guys implicating themselves in a giant scheme to defraud the government? And before you say, oh, well, obviously one of them secretly recorded the meeting as insurance to protect themselves, and throw the others under the bus if shit hit the fan, that also doesn't make sense, because we didn't find the footage in one of their safes or something. No, it's just lying around in an abandoned movie lot, right next to a fully set up and working movie projector. There wasn't some unknown party who led you here, or had the recording in their possession. You weren't even looking for it. You stumbled on it by complete chance. I'm sorry, but the game drops the ball badly here. Despite my issues with how some of the previous cases went, at least they made sense, and how we found evidence or got convictions also made sense, even if the explanation for how things went a certain way was just police incompetence. Here, the game just hands you the key piece of evidence you need in order to take everyone down. Like, what happened here? Hey there, Future Fuzzy here. I need to briefly pause my upcoming rant here as I found something during my editing. So when you discover and then play the film, it starts off like an ad explaining what the Suburban Redevelopment Fund is, and how they're planning to help returning GIs, which might make you think it's just a phony ad to cover their tracks and show how their members care so much about veterans. But immediately after that intro, it just cuts to these guys sitting down and discussing their whole scheme. So the developers may have originally wanted the film to be a simple ad, explaining the existence of the Suburban Redevelopment Fund and showing off the city leaders who teamed up to create it, giving the player a clue into who they might need to investigate, as opposed to the end result where it looks like someone secretly recorded their plan. It doesn't change how I feel about finding the film, but it gives an explanation as to why it would be sitting around in an abandoned film lot. Most likely, they changed what was in the film late in development, but didn't have the time to rewrite how you come across it in a way that makes sense. Now back to Past Fuzzy. I know the game had a lot of issues during development, most of which wasn't known until the game was released. Maybe they spent too much money, or were under pressure now that Rockstar was their publisher, so they absolutely had to release it on time, causing them to cut corners in content. If I remember correctly, all the DLC missions were originally part of the game before being cut and resold later, which sounds like them being scummy with monetization, but it's also possible those missions weren't close to complete, so they cut their losses and finished it later. It may also explain why so many important plot elements were relegated to the newspaper cutscenes, instead of being part of existing cases or being their own cases. There had to be a better way, even if they couldn't take more time to flesh things out and drip feed you evidence about the Suburban Development Fund. In fact, there is a better way. I already brought it up, but they should have stashed it in the safe belonging to one of the conspirators. It makes more sense, and you can infer immediately that whoever is in its possession is using it as insurance. What makes this whole thing worse is that they go with that idea later for a different piece of evidence. Someone was keeping info on one of the others as insurance in their safe. You could have stuffed the film in there, played it on the guy's projector, and voila, it all makes sense. Sorry to harp on this for so long, but for a game that's so often praised for its story and writing, this is an indefensible blemish on it. Kelso's sleuthing hasn't gone unnoticed by the SRF, who send out the most incompetent hitmen to deal with him. Sure, they kick his ass and kidnap him, but the idiots didn't bother to tie him up or lock the trunk of their car, so he manages to just fumble away to safety and back to Elsa's.
So you're still carrying that Army 45, Cole?
For God's sake, Cole! Call an ambulance!
After sleeping off almost dying, Kelso will be approached by the assistant DA, who wants to recruit him and get his help in cleaning up the corruption in the city. Continuing the case, Kelso will confront and expose the parties involved in the Suburban Development Fund, first going after his boss, Curtis Benson, who was approving the insurance claims for the shoddy houses being built. He also catches him with a really young girl in his bed. Yikes. Next, Kelso will talk to Courtney Sheldon, revealing that his name is on the documents regarding the Suburban Development Fund. His mentor, Dr. Fontaine, planned to use him as a fall guy. While Sheldon goes to confront him, in a really awesome scene, Kelso will team up with the remaining members of the 6th Marines and storm Leland Monroe's estate. After shooting through the old man's guards and shooting the bastard in the leg.
Yeah, Kelso.
That's my opening negotiating position.
Kelso finds more incriminating evidence about the SRF in the guy's safe. See, right here, this is where the film would have made way more sense to discover. All the pieces falling into place, and the big players exposed, Cole and Kelso have everything they need to bring down the whole conspiracy. But before they can, the pair will have to deal with a ghost from their past. Their actions during the war will finally come to the surface. Remember when I said Courtney Sheldon left to go confront his mentor? Well, it didn't end well for him, as Fontaine gave him a strong dose of morphine to shut him up for good. Staged as an overdose, Cole will find his body later and confront Roy about his own role in the entire scheme. During this time, Elsa will visit Dr. Fontaine for a bit of therapy, telling him about her relationship with Cole, but giving up too much information, as she lets slip that Kelso is investigating the whole deal with the shady insurance. Unsure of how much she may know, Fontaine tries to kill Elsa by doming her with a crystal globe, Before he can finish the job, the monster of his own creation returns, killing the good doctor and then whisking away with Elsa. We'll switch between our two leads during this final section. Cole uncovering the final pieces about the Suburban Development Fund, and that Fontaine lost control of his arsonist. Kelso, meanwhile, is investigating the identity of said arsonist, the clues leading him to an old abandoned ranch home. Searching the place, finding paper cranes hanging everywhere, along with a military-issued flamethrower, a photo on the wall confirms the man's identity. Ira Hogeboom, another member of the 6th Marines alongside Cole and Kelso. The giant of a man worked on flamethrower detail during their time in Okinawa, and here is where we learn everything about what happened during the war. First, because I forgot to bring it up until now, during the Battle of Sugarloaf Hill, when ordered to push through enemy lines, Cole lost his entire battalion. This includes his close friend during the war, Hank Merrill, who was blown to bits by an explosion, which left Cole in shock as he laid beside what was left of his buddy until the following morning. Discovered by another regiment of Marines, he would earn a promotion and the Silver Star, though as the sole survivor, Cole would be guilt-ridden by the experience. Later on during the war, he would lead another squad of men, and was under strict orders to clear out any caves they passed in case enemies are held up inside. Due to how meticulous and thorough he approached his orders, his unit would fall behind the rest of the other Marines. In his hastiness when his group were ambushed by the Japanese, he'd order Ira Hogeboom to push past the enemy line and clear out everyone in the cave with a flamethrower. Unfortunately, the cave wasn't an enemy outpost, but a makeshift hospital full of civilians, including women and children. Realizing he just torched innocent people, Ira's mind would shatter, breaking down as he had to be dragged away by his fellow Marines. Things only get worse though, as a lot of the civilians are still alive and are in agonizing pain. Cracking under pressure and unable to fix the horrible mistake he's caused, Cole orders his men to put everyone out of their misery. Disgusted at his commanding officer's actions, Courtney Sheldon would shoot Cole in the back as Kelso's unit shows up to regroup with them, ordering all the Marines present to never speak of this incident again. This event is what created the rift between Cole, Kelso, and the rest of the 6 Marines. Cole's whole journey and career of being a detective has been a way for him to try and make amends for his mistakes during the war. He's thorough with his investigations and wants to avoid getting ahead at the expense of others. Hell, it's partially why he chases glory with the bigger cases. He wants to be celebrated for helping others and doing good, not be handed a medal that, in his mind, celebrates his failure and cowardice. Kelso, for his part, has realized the anguish his old friend has been going through, and the two finally make peace during this last section. Kelso assuring Cole he isn't the monster and failure he thinks he is, and that he needs to let go and move on.
Peterson, I'm going to need some help. I've got Monroe, Fontaine, and all the others. It's all tied up nicely. It goes all the way to the top. Meet me at the L.A. River Tunnel entrance just north of the First Street Bridge in half an hour. Don't ask questions. Just be there.
Thanks to a map in his ranch house, the duo will find out that Ira is hiding in the L.A. River tunnels, and that he's got Elsa. Racing through the streets and trying to avoid their fellow officers, who have been ordered to kill the pair, they eventually make it into the tunnels. After a long shootout with men working for the SRF, Kelso will eventually find Elsa and Ira. Elsa is safe and unharmed, Ira having taken her away in order to protect her. Unfortunately, the poor bastard's mind is long gone. The trauma from the war, combined with the people he accidentally killed during the arson jobs, have destroyed him. Looking for someone to ease his pain, he salutes his sergeant one last time before Kelso puts him out of his misery.
Don't cry, miss. Sergeant Kelso has come to help ease my way. I was proud to serve with you, Jack.
Get out of here, Cole!
Struggling through the rising waters of the tunnel, Cole will find a sewer grate above with his partner Biggs waiting, and hoisting Elsa up to safety. Running out of time and with a wave of water on its way, and Jack too injured to get himself out, Cole decides to make the ultimate sacrifice.
Get out of here! I'm not arguing. You're wounded, Jack. Let me help. What are you waiting for?
Jump, Cole! Jump for it!
Sometime later at Cole's funeral, we see his friends and family in attendance, with that scumbag Roy of all people delivering the eulogy. Despite all the work Kelso and Cole did in exposing the Suburban Redevelopment Fund, not everyone went down. The assistant DA cut a deal with the chief of police, protecting the department, cleaning up Cole's name, but also exploiting his death to cover their own asses. It's a bittersweet ending, as well he managed to redeem himself and make up for his mistakes by saving Elsa and Kelso. All his efforts in taking down the corrupt group running the show behind the scenes in LA ends with it being replaced by another.
Who recognized the need to remove the odd bad apple from a department made up of good men.
Herschel?
A man who never gave up.
Yeah, Jack.
Who continued to fight the good fight.
I think you knew that, Jack.
The fight that cost him his own life. A good husband. A good father. And may I say, a good friend.
And that was L.A. Noire. So what did I think? Well, the game was good. Damn good. It does a solid job portraying the gritty streets of post-war 1940s Los Angeles, not just meticulously crafting what the city looked like back then, but also capturing the tone of the era. It has a compelling narrative that kept me invested as I played, with interesting but flawed characters who felt real. Cole Phelps is a complex character I'm not 100% sure how I feel about. The game does a lot to flesh him out and keep him from feeling one note. He's a man with a sense of duty who wants to do the right thing, and not cut corners like other people on the force. He has very progressive views when it comes to things like race, and doesn't talk down to or act like he's better than the minority suspects he encounters. The death of his men under his command weighed heavy on him. The medal he earned just for surviving serves as a monument and constant reminder of his failure. But despite those issues, the game doesn't completely portray Cole as pure and sympathetic. Regardless of his reasons for doing so, he does chase after glory and wants to be this big shot acknowledged by others. As forced as his affair with Elsa may seem, he never actually takes responsibility for it, or apologizes for that matter. Hell, the first thing he does after his wife throws him out of the house is run right back to Elsa. During the final cases, he manipulates Kelso into helping him, knowing full well that he could be putting his former friend in danger. Sure, he comes clean about it, but only after Elsa pushes him to. His personal code, his history, and his flaws make him a man who isn't completely likable, but works as the game's main character. L.A. Noire's shining star is its investigation and interrogation system, creating engaging, unique, and most importantly, fun gameplay. It's all everyone knows the game for, but that's because of how innovative and fleshed out it was. It's the reason to play L.A. Noire. Unfortunately, it's also a case of putting all your eggs in one basket, as everything outside of those investigations feel extremely lacking. Combat is as basic as it gets. As well crafted as 1940s Los Angeles is, the game doesn't do enough to make the player engage with it. Just driving around, finding some landmarks, or doing some street crimes. Very barebones stuff that makes the city feel empty and uninteresting. While I think this game would work equally well by stripping out the open world and going for a more traditional visual novel or point-and-click type game, a potential sequel could really improve upon everything outside of the interrogations, giving us a more lively and interesting world to explore, better and more challenging combat, and more fleshed out side content to explore. Unfortunately, it'll probably never happen. Current Rockstar really isn't interested in revisiting old franchises or taking any risks, just focusing on doing the bare minimum to port and remaster old games, while milking GTA Online to death. L.A. Noire is a unique and truly one-of-a-kind experience, one that will stick with you long after the credits roll. And that's the video. Thanks for watching. Sorry if my release schedule was a bit wonky this month. I had some things going on that delayed both of the videos this month. I had originally hoped to get in 3, especially since Maneater was meant to be a quicker project to work on, but I'm going to relax and let L.A. Noire close out the month. I'm mapping out the videos I want to do for next month, and I think you guys are going to enjoy them, especially since I get to cover some horror games. Again, Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a like and comment down below. And if you're new to the channel, I'd appreciate it if you subscribed. Excuse me as I'm going to spend the weekend revisiting Cyberpunk 2077 and checking out the 2.0 patch. I'm FuzzySlippers, and I'll see you later. Peace.